Khanun is our next typhoon threat on tonight's Tropical Weather Bulletin. And now the latest around the wide world of tropics. Tropical Weather Bulletin for July 29th. So we have our two cyclones now active in the Western Pacific, Doksuri and Khanun. That's been the case for a while. Doksuri still alive as it moves inland over China, making a strong landfall the other day, and is now just holding on to tropical storm status. Khanun on its way up, likely to become a typhoon fairly soon. Day 59 of Atlantic hurricane season, and for those who haven't been paying attention, you might want to start. There's an area of interest there with a 50% chance of development. National Hurricane Center going slightly higher at 60%, a system that is likely to recurve in the central Atlantic. Day 77 in the Eastern Pacific, and we've got another system there that could develop. Decent chances now, 60%. NHC once again a little bit higher at 70%. We also designated another one that might have a sneaky little shot in front of it, at 10% on that one right now. Western Pacific has the two tropical storms, no other areas of interest. These two take up enough space, I think, and lots of general rainfall occurring over the Philippines and over the Indochina region, causing large amounts of rainfall, partly to do with the storms that have influenced the weather around them. North Indian Ocean still staying quiet there. There is another area of thunderstorms above India right now that's probably causing quite a lot of rainfall once again. Looking at satellite imagery of the last 24 hours, you may be able to make out all of what I've just said there. Certainly the two tropical cyclones in the Western Pacific, quite clear to see. Khanun with a lot of rain indicated from satellite there, and Doksuri quite a bit at first, but that has really tapered off in the last few frames. Well, here is Doksuri then, the former super typhoon, now well inland over China, probably a couple of hundred miles west of Shanghai at this point, gradually moving north-northwest, and very little left of its core, as you can clearly see on this imagery. Even visible isn't really doing it many favours in the looks department. It's still probably delivering copious amounts of rainfall as denoted by radar, still quite a large band or two there, and a few yellows and oranges in that as well, especially in the trailing band towards the southeast there near the coast. A few spots to the northwest there as well, looks like they're producing small amounts of high rain rates. Here is Khanun. It's a partial system, you might call it. The northwestern side is very bare. It's the south and eastern sides that are really filled out, and you can see the size of this system as well. It is going to be a very large system, at least at the beginning, and you can clearly see that with its rotation that you can see over the center. If it had an eye, it would probably be many tens of miles wide there. Sea surface temperatures in the Eastern Pacific look like this, still very warm off the coast of Mexico and probably warming in a few spots there, and it is taking shape further out to sea as well. The Atlantic still boiling hot in the Gulf of Mexico, around Florida and up the Gulf Stream, and over the general Atlantic Ocean things are still looking good there as well, where that system will be tracking. Temperatures are already good enough and will remain the case for the next 5 days at least, until it goes way off to the northeast towards Canada. Western Pacific has really warmed up in the last few days. I've been watching how the sea surface temperatures have extended northwards, transposed themselves almost, and so the northern coastline of Japan, large parts of it now have 26 degrees Celsius waters, and very warm SSTs off the coast of China and near the northern Mariana Islands. North Indian Ocean has remained relatively unchanged there, one or two little spots of around 30 degrees Celsius. The Arabian Sea still hit and miss. Southwest Indian Ocean much cooler now in the off season, and that trend is continuing, will do for another month or two. And the Australian region, a similar story, with only tiny parts of the coastline reaching that 26 degree threshold. South in Pacific, goodness me, Fiji there, half and half once again, and Vanuatu holding on mostly. Sea surface temperatures above average in those areas. The Western Pacific, a clear cool slot there where Doksuri used to be. Where Khanun is, though, it will track over around average temperatures. Eastern Pacific is half and half. Atlantic is generally 2 to 3 degrees above average, with an extreme warm pool off the coast of Atlantic Canada. So subtropical systems or storms that end up moving up there could have a little bit of an extended lifespan. Oceanic heat content still looking very good across the Caribbean Sea and into the Gulf of Mexico, but it still takes that storm to actually get there and have good conditions to take advantage. Western Pacific, you'll note I'm surprised at this. Doksuri has taken red and turned it to blue off the coast of Luzon. I thought it would be a bit more resilient there in the Western Pacific, but clearly not, and decent values off the coast of Mexico. Looking towards the GFS computer model in the next 5 days, you can clearly see that Atlantic system taking shape. Relatively average looking there. The southwestern side never gets tropical storm force winds there for a good while before it recurves well towards the northeast, being pushed by a front and then skirting off towards the northeast eventually. Looks like it should miss all land areas, but it could get some intensity going as it does that recurvature. It's not going to be a dawn, it's not going to circle around for a while, but it could get close to hurricane strength. Eastern Pacific, we're also looking at a potential break in the silence that's been there for a while. First, that little system on the left-hand side that has a small chance, but the one on the right eventually gets itself going towards the end of that 5-day period and really looks quite good once it does get going. But it is later in that period. Models aren't fully converging on this just yet, which is why we're only giving it 60%, but in theory, the chances could rise quite a bit more fairly soon if those models do converge, and it looks like it could get towards hurricane status. Well, here is Khanun super in size, but would it get to super typhoon status? I would say no. It could still get to category 4 status though, as it moves through Okinawa and into the East China Sea, and then what could give that coastal area a run for its money once again. With the Shanghai area included in all of that. There is over 100 million people in with a 10% chance of damaging winds from this storm, and there it is making at least a typhoon landfall. Looking at rainfall expectations, factoring in both of the storms, some areas will receive impacts from both, or at least rainfall. You can see Doksuri's effects first of all off the southeastern coast of China and inland to the north, and then Khanun, and also the enhanced monsoonal pattern in the western Philippine Islands, making for a very wet picture across the whole basin almost. 14 inches in a few spots inland over China and along the coast, and higher than that near Shanghai, possibly 18 inches, that's 450 millimeters, possibly 24 inches in western Luzon, not far from Manila, that's 600 millimeters, and in some outlying areas at sea where the storm might stall for a bit, 40 inches quite possible underneath Khanun, and getting up near 10 inches on the forecast there for Okinawa. A lot to take in on that imagery. Into the long range, day 5 to 10, there's another system that gets itself going, and that looks like it could be a stronger one and could affect the coast of Mexico with tropical storm force winds, and there's simultaneous hurricanes. Didn't think you'd see that in the Eastern Pacific, judging by recent activity, but that is what the GFS is suggesting. It is just a hint at the moment. That's day 5 to 10, not too far out. And both of those continue along, moving at a fairly low latitude towards the west, which means they'll hold out for a bit longer. What happens to Khanun? It continues to move northwards, and it still survives for a bit before moving towards the northern part of the Korean peninsula and well inland over Russia. And then we get maybe a next system, one or two, that's clipping the coast of Japan whilst we go along there. So it really is getting towards that busy part of the Western Pacific season where you really don't know what you're going to get. Some strong storms that we've had so far further west, but we could also get a lot of sloppy stuff occurring further out to sea. Scan the barcode and that will take you to the Force 13 merch store, where we have all of our usual products, including full season and individual storm animations on your request. And you can also take a look at our Still Waiting for Hone t-shirts, because my goodness, we sure are still waiting. Into the silly range then, what happens to these two hurricanes in the Eastern Pacific? Well, one of them just about makes it to Hawaii, feels a bit like Calvin actually. The next one well, eventually goes there actually, but it dies off well before that. And then 2 more systems forming, a very tiny hurricane there, and another system further back that becomes a major hurricane right at the end of that run. But that is 16 days out, and there's no guarantee that at least 3 of these 4 systems will form. So keep watching for the Eastern Pacific. We might get that promised wave train. You can talk about all of that on our Discord server, discord.gg/force13, for tropical weather and general weather chat, with over 3,500 members from all around the world. Well, cast your minds back to 2015. We had a developing situation, an expansive, very large tropical storm Khanun, which was making landfall in the Bengal region around the India-Bangladesh border. We also had Tropical Storm Guillermo, which had just formed in the Eastern Pacific today, and Tropical Depression 8E, which was ahead of it and failed to get a name in the Eastern Pacific. The Atlantic was quiet, and I think we were just a few days away from seeing Pseudolaw in the Western Pacific, as I'm sure many will remember. Excellent. Back to today, we are code orange for those who didn't see that earlier. The next name in the Atlantic is Emily. Is it on its way? In the Eastern Pacific, it's Dora. And in the Central Pacific, of course, it is still Hone. In the Western Pacific now, the next name is Lan. Remember the last one? And in the North Indian Ocean, it's equally short name, Tej. 32 storms so far in 2023 around the world. And in the Southern Hemisphere, we don't expect anything anytime soon, but in the Australian region, next up is Jasper. Southwest Indian Ocean will start with Alvaro, and the South Pacific's next name is Lola. That's all from tonight's Tropical Weather Bulletin. We'll be back again tomorrow night.